Hey, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon session. We're just waiting for a few people to show up, and unless somebody has something that we want to cover, we're going to cover more about the military occupation. And we all need to start our own common law juror assemblies and common law grand juries. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon event. Hey, everybody. Okay, we're just going to let a few more people show up here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If anybody has any presentations or anything you want to talk about, let me know. I'm certainly, I'll answer any questions, but also I'm planning on doing this military occupation presentation. Unless someone has something else that you'd like to talk about, I'm open to any ideas. Okay, well, I'm going to watch the chat. If anybody has any questions, I'll try and answer them. If any ideas on what we want to talk about, I was thinking about talking about possibly land titles maybe tomorrow morning. Um, if anybody's interested in that, or if anybody has anything else they want to talk about, I'm certainly open. I know some people had expressed an interest about land titles. And so that will be on the session tomorrow morning on Saturday. I'm in beautiful Ocean City. Um, Actually, let me do one other thing here. I want to talk a little bit about my book before we get too carried away. Um, my Trump book is now available. I wrote a book about Trump, about the deep state and who they are and where they came from and how they got there. Did you know there's two national governments? There's actually, if you look on a Federal Reserve note, and actually, if you go to the Articles of Confederation, Article 1 says, quote, the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. And then if what happened is in 1861, the southern states walked out of Congress and they ceased to have a quorum. And Lincoln ordered them back under executive authority, and they've been operating under executive authority ever since. And so then in 1871, Congress set up an unconstitutional corporation called United States of America. And if you look on your passport, or if you have any silver eagles, or any U.S. any money in your pocket, it'll say United States of America on it. And that's what you see all over the place operating these days. That's the unconstitutional corporation. And so in 1933, that corporation went bankrupt, and it was seized by its creditors, and it's now owned and operated by somebody. And all of this is in my book about who they are, where they came from, how they got there, their history, as far as anything I can prove. Actually, there's a lot of people that think there's maybe more than two United States. There probably is, but those are the two that I can prove. Anyways, so in my book, it's all in there, and the court cases. One of the things that I do aerospace engineering consulting, and I help design the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. So one of the things they always taught me to do is make sure I support everything. And so there's all sorts of court citations, law dictionary definitions, international treaties, all sorts of stuff in the book to support what I say. Matter of fact, there's very little that I say that's my opinion. Although there is a few things. For example, remember Howard Hughes? How he was always hiding out? Well, this is my opinion. I think that all of these billionaires, when they get to be billionaires, they get approached by the New World Order crowd, and they get told that they're going to go along with the New World Order program, or they're going to turn up dead. And I think Howard Hughes didn't want to go along with the program, and he was worried about being poisoned and all sorts of stuff. And he was hiding out all the time. I think the same thing happened to Trump. And I do have some evidence of that too, by the way. There was a helicopter crash in 1984. Excuse me. And 3 of his executives got killed. And he was supposed to have been on that flight, and he canceled out at the last minute. And so I think he knows exactly what the issues are. And I think that's what makes him a patriot, quite frankly. But I titled a book, A True American Patriot or Not. I mean, I let people come to their own conclusion. I just present the evidence, and you can decide for yourself. Anyways, so that's what my book is about, is what he's dealing with. I don't know if anybody's heard of Jerome Corsi. Jerome Corsi is, he was actually charged in the Mueller investigation for lying. And his wife told him that she would rather go and visit him in jail rather than him plea bargain to something he didn't do. And so he refused to plea bargain it, and they dropped the charges. And so it's kind of interesting. That probably would have been the better course of action for General Flynn, but these people are Satanists. You know, they're diabolically evil. It's if you understand, if you go look at the speaker's podium in the U.S. House of Representatives, you'll see who owns Congress, and there'll be 2 Roman fasci on each side of the speaker's podium, and there'll also be a Roman spear that's planted on all conquered nations. And Congress is owned by the Roman cult, is who owns it. And so there's Satanists. They lie, they cheat, they steal Roman law. There's a maxim of Roman law that says, let he who is willing to be deceived. So they're liars. They cheat, they steal, they do whatever they can to obtain their objectives, whatever. They don't care. And so this is what we're dealing with. And that's why, in my opinion, okay, I don't know for sure, but I think that the reason that the National Guard was in D.C. was because they caught that. What happened is those Dominion voting machines were transmitting their data overseas to Europe through an Italian satellite that was leased to the Vatican, and so they caught them. And so that's why I think that the National Guard were there after the election, because they seized the District of Columbia back. The District of Columbia was owned and operated by the Roman cult, and the U.S., the Republic of the United States of America under Trump, seized the district back, and now it's in our possession. And I've heard that, and I don't know, but I've heard that the White House is empty, and they're going to have a new capital in Missouri. I've heard it was going to be in Missouri, near Kansas City. So, anyways, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of rumors going around. I think that Trump might still be president. Biden is a CEO of a bankrupt corporation. I guess we'll see. But so I think that so that's what my new book is about. Most of the stuff that we just talked about is in there, although obviously it was written before the election, so I didn't put anything in there about the election. You can order the book from Amazon or from my website. I prefer you order the book from my website, and I'll autograph the book. And if you get it from Amazon, it won't be autographed. And but if you get it from my website, it'll be autographed. You want to know the origins of the deep state and who's behind it? You want to know why it's called the Trump administration? Do you want to know what an administration is? Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? Do you want to know who owns Congress? I think we already talked about some of the stuff with Trump becoming president. There's back to who Jerome Corsi is. There's a YouTube video where Jerome Corsi, he's got a YouTube channel, and he's written a bunch of books, and he's got a PhD in political science. Anyways, Jerome Corsi says, as a matter of fact, there's a YouTube video with Jerome Corsi where he says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him, and they said that there was a group of generals in the Pentagon that were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. And what happened was, in my opinion, after 3 months, Jerome Corsi gets a phone call, and they decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed for him for president. So, my opinion, okay? Well, first of all, this isn't my opinion. No, there's a war college in the Pentagon, right? They study warfare, and that's what they should be studying. But the most interesting part of the most interesting part of any kind of warfare is, why did an inferior force defeat a superior force? Anyways, it's called psychological warfare. And so they study that stuff. And if you look at any officer in the military, I guarantee you they'll have something on their resume about the war college. And they study warfare. There's a war college in the Pentagon. So I think, I have no proof, but I think, and you could see it happening all over the place. I think the entire Trump presidency was a giant military psyop. They've been playing it right from the beginning. Even right now, it's being played by the military. They're building a case against these New World Order crowd, and there's going to be war crimes trials. And I'll bet you watch. I'll bet you. And It's a bunch of treason and sedition and all sorts of stuff going on. I've heard some of them have already been executed. I don't know. I don't think they do that. Just because once they do get down to the trials, they usually make that kind of stuff. Maybe I don't know about the trial, but certainly the executions will be public. They want to like discourage people from engaging in treason and sedition. Anyway, so that's my opinion. Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? I think I just told you. Anyways, do you want to know who owns Congress? I think I told you that too. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Well, I think anybody that's watching my videos knows they're law enforcement officers because they're enforcing the martial law. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? Okay, well, anybody that watches my videos would know that too, because it's by privileges. When you take advantage of a privilege, then you turn yourself into a slave. You want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? Well, it's the same stuff that's been going on for centuries. It caused the Magna Carta, it caused the War of Independence, and it's causing what's going on right now. And you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? I think I told you that. If you can't figure it out, then I don't know what to say. In reality, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. So anyways, so what we're going to be talking today, let me just check the chat real quick and see if there's anything. Which previous slide? You're going to have to, there's a time lag between when I do it and when it gets up there on YouTube. And as far as words are written, the IRS is not beholden to the law of the land. The IRS operates under martial law. That's where it's written. Okay, martial law, which means no law. There is no law. You have to follow their rules. If you're under their rules, then now the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. But if you go into an IRS court and start talking Constitution, they'll hold you in contempt, and because you're in a contract, and you have to understand that. And so that doesn't get you too far. The key is not to take advantage of their privileges. You have to understand the law and not take advantage of their privileges, and you'll get along just fine. Matter of fact, the IRS won't want to talk to you. But you get into a contract with the IRS, and you're in a contract with the devil. It's really who you're in a contract with. It's all Satanism. Anyways, so we're going to be talking about the military martial law, about how Texas and other states are under a military occupation. First of all, the Civil War was an undeclared war, and there was no peace treaty. No peace treaties were ever signed from the Civil War. It was an armistice, and that was all, a ceasefire. This is Article 4 of the Hague Convention, Hague Convention 4, Article 42. Territory is considered occupied when it's placed under the authority of the hostile army. The occupation extends only to the territory where such authority has been established and can be exercised. That's Law and Customs of War on the Land, Hague Convention 4, Article 42. This is Article 2 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949. Actually, I could probably thin this down. So this is Article 2 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians. There's some stuff I just took out, obviously. In addition to the provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime during the present convention, the present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war of any other armed conflict which may arise, even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory even if the said occupation meets with no armed resistance. The parties who are parties thereto shall remain bound by it in their mutual relations, and so they're supposed to follow the rules anyways, even if one of the parties is not a party to the Geneva Convention. They shall furthermore be bound by the convention in relation to said power if the latter, okay, and so then that's immaterial. That shrinks it down. This is Article 1 of the Libre Code. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. So, I don't know how many of you remember Texas in particular, but you start thinking about, like, for example, when the colonies, all of the colonies, the 13 colonies, and Canada were all part of English colonies, right? And there was a Royal Proclamation of 1763. I'm not sure if I'm going to show that in this one. I think I know I do show it in another one. But there's a Royal Proclamation of 1763, and it says that if you want to go into this Indian territory, they say that this is the boundaries of your colonies, and after that, it's Indian territory, and if you want to go into this Indian territory, you have to get a passport, have to get permission. Anyways, so this military occupation could apply to everywhere other than the 13 colonies and the original provinces in Canada of Upper Canada and Lower Canada, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. Everywhere else is under a military occupation. Anyways, martial law does not cease during a hostile occupation except by a special proclamation ordered by the commander-in-chief, which there's never been. I've never seen one yet for anywhere. Or by special mention in a treaty of peace. Now, there have been treaties of peace. For example, Mexico. When the U.S. went to war with Mexico in the 1840s, they wound up getting what's now Arizona and California and New Mexico and Utah, and there was a bunch of territory that they wound up with. And but if you look in the Treaty of Hidalgo, that's called the Treaty of Hidalgo, there is nothing in there about the martial law ending. And the same thing with Puerto Rico. The U.S. went to war and got Puerto Rico. That was in the late 1800s. And Puerto Rico became part of the United States, went to war with Spain. And there's nothing in that treaty that says anything about the martial law ending. Despite the fact, now this is where I said earlier this morning, I said that this book is called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett. That's available on my website, by the way. That book is really good. It's actually a real easy read. It's about 100 pages, a little over 100 pages, and it's double spaced. So you can cover that thing pretty fast. And It is a wealth of information. This is one of the things that's taken out of it. Despite the fact that the southern states had been functioning peacefully for 2 years and had been counted to secure ratification of the 13th Amendment, Congress passed the Reconstruction Act, which provided for the military occupation of 10 of the 11 southern states. It excluded Tennessee from military occupation, and one must suspect it was because Tennessee had ratified the 14th Amendment on July 7th, 1866. Anyways, so they're already under military occupation because of the war. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. There's my front page of my channel. There's my the bell. The arrow's pointing at the bell. The subscribe button's already been clicked, so the bell is to get notified. And so don't forget to get notified. Anyways, this is another little clip from this non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett. Note, there is no treaty of peace between the Union and the several states. That is known of, and by the end of the full martial law was finally declared by withdrawal of troops in the street. But repeal of all forms of law martial has never been declared. So again, remember, there's three types of martial law. There's the full martial law, there's the martial law rule, and there's the martial law proper. So the end of the full martial law was declared, but the martial law rule was never ended. This is out of that book again. It says, note, under law martial, only the criminal jurisdiction of a military court is recognized law, but as Article 3 says, the civil courts can continue wholly or in part as long as the civil jurisdiction does not violate the military orders laid down by the commander-in-chief or one of his commanders. By this means, a military venue, jurisdiction, and authority are imposed upon the occupied populace under the disguise of the ordinary civil courts and officers of the occupied district or region, because the so-called civil authorities in an occupied district or region only act at the pleasure of a military authority. It should also be noted here that the several state legislatures, county boards of commissioners, and city councils are constantly legislating to please the edicts of the federal government, the occupying force, and that their legislation in this sense is not an exercise of state sovereignty, but instead a compliance with the edicts of the military force which occupies the several states, and consequently are edicts of martial law rule. And this guy this is some really good stuff. So we're under martial law. There's three kinds of martial law. There's full martial law proper, and martial law rule. And that's taken from Ex parte Milligan, the U.S. Supreme Court. This was during the Civil War. And this is cited in non-ratification of the 14th Amendment as well. This is Washington, Revised Code of Washington, Legislative Declaration for Civil Liberties Day of Remembrance. The legislature recognizes that on February 19, 1942, the President of the United States issued Executive Order 9066, which authorized military rule over civilian law and lives. It's interesting that the United States went bankrupt, and 7 years later, they're issuing these executive orders. Let's take a look at the chat, see if there's any chat, any questions. Oh, no questions. Okay. No birth certificate and still have to land in California. That's interesting. What do you mean land in California? Does that mean land an airplane, or not sure what you mean there? Okay, so evidence there's a military occupation. Military script circulated for money, Federal Reserve notes. Police use rank structure of captain, lieutenant, sergeant. Police refer to us as civilians. Courts presume everything. Curfew is evidence of martial law, like in Quebec. In Canada, they're having curfews and garbage like that because of this coronavirus hoax. All you have to do is look at we're under a medical dictatorship is what they're under. The state regional areas under metro government provide military venue for peace officers to enforce martial law jurisdiction, and that's true. There's a lot of metro governments. In Dallas, for example, and Fort Worth, the Fort Worth police actually patrol several cities. So what happens is the cities chip in to a fund to finance the police, the Fort Worth police. Bar members, again, are United Nations foreign agents or officers of the court. Okay, that's what British accredited regency. They're enforcing the martial law. That's one evidence that you have that you're under martial law is they're all officers of the court or bar members. The judges and lawyers are all members of the bar. That's all the evidence of the martial law. That's why I file bar grievances. Okay, you file because these lawyers sitting there thinking they can get away with this stuff, and their bosses, the bar knows exactly what's going on, and you start filing bar grievances and bringing up the right issues, and they start having problems. This is Amanda Sykes versus State of Texas. Court of Appeals, Texas, 3rd District. The defendant confessed to shooting her husband accidentally. The defendant argued that her conviction was void because the public officials responsible for investigating and prosecuting her case failed to qualify for their offices. The appellate court ruled that the failure of the officers and the prosecuting attorneys to properly qualify for their offices did not render their acts void because each established de facto authority to exercise the power of their office or appointment. There was evidence in the record that each officer was acting under a color of authority and had a reputation in the community as a law enforcement officer. Similar to the prosecuting attorney testified that she had held her offices for some time and had a reputation in the community as a prosecuting attorney. Furthermore, because the record indicated that the county no longer used a jury wheel, the trial court did not err in ordering the sheriff to summon additional potential jurors. Interesting. And so it's de facto. They're all de facto. And that needs to come out of there. We'll take both of these. This is Article 6 of the Geneva Convention. The present convention shall apply from the outset of any conflict or occupation mentioned in Article 2. In the territorial parties to the conflict, the application of the present convention shall cease on general close of military occupation. In the case of occupied territory, the application of the present convention shall cease 1 year after the general close of military operations. However, the occupying power shall be bound for the duration of the occupation to the extent that such power exercises the functions of government in such territory by the provisions of the following articles to the present convention. And there's a whole bunch of them. And so we're going to go through some of those because that's where you get your remedies. Because Texas is still under a military occupation. You start bringing that stuff up. Matter of fact, I went with Bank of America. They were harassing me for a Social Security number. And I called them up and I told them they're engaged in war crimes and coercing information from me. And they immediately came back and said, we don't require social security numbers. And it was their computer that was harassing me for a social security number. So they turned that off, and I never, they still, their computer still bothers me once in a while, but so the point is that you bring up the right issues, and they immediately, I got them on the phone, and they immediately says, we don't require social security numbers. And anyways, I know other people have had troubles with Bank of America, but I haven't, I can tell you that. It's all in how you want to get up in their face. This is Article 27 of the Geneva Convention. Protected persons are entitled in all circumstances to respect for their persons, their honor, their family rights, their religious convictions and practices, and their manners and customs. They shall at all times be humanely treated, shall be protected especially against all acts of violence or threats thereof, against insults and public curiosity. Women shall be especially protected against any attack on their honor, in particular against rape and forced prostitution and any form of indecent assault. Without prejudice to the provisions relating to their state of health, age, and sex, all protected persons shall be treated with the same consideration by the party to the conflict in whose power they are, without any adverse distinction based in particular on race, religion, or political opinion. So if they're taking reprisals against you for your political opinion, they got a problem. However, the parties to the conflict may take such measures of control and security in regard as may be necessary as a result of the war. Probably should just take that out. Article 33. No protected person may be punished for offense which he or she has not personally committed. Collective penalties and likewise all measures of intimidation or terrorism are prohibited. Pillage is prohibited. Reprisals against protected persons for their property are prohibited. So again, remember, taking reprisals for my political opinions, pillaging. I mean, need to bring that up. If they're stealing your property, if they seize your car, that's pillaging. Collective penalties, all measures of intimidation or terrorism. I mean, if you think about it, a military uniform is designed to be threatening. And so you could say just because the cop's at your door, he's terrorizing you. And start bringing that stuff up. Occupying power may not compel protected persons to serve in its armed or auxiliary forces. No pressure or propaganda which aims at securing voluntary enlistment is permitted. This is one thing that I talk about in my do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft video, and they can't coerce you to enlist. You bring that up. Article 52, Geneva Convention relative. This is Article 52. No contract, agreement, or regulation shall impair the right of any worker, will voluntary or not, wherever he may be, to apply to the representatives of the protecting power and in order to request the said power's intervention. All measures aimed at creating unemployment or restricting opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to induce them to work for the occupying power are prohibited. And that's another thing they do. Matter of fact, think about it, this COVID hoax. That's what they're doing. They're coercing you to work for the government. Article 66. In the case of a breach of penal provisions, occupying power may hand over the accused to its properly constituted non-political military courts on conditions said courts sit in the occupied country. Courts of appeal shall preferably sit in the occupied country. Yeah, so They don't want you to know that you're under occupation. They want you to think that it's perfectly normal and all the rest of it. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. State parties to the present covenant, including those having responsibility for the administration of non-self-governing and trust territories. Okay, so that's what you are if you're occupied. Shall promote the realization of the right of self-determination and shall respect that right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations. All persons shall be equal. This is International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights again. Before the courts and tribunals in the determination of any criminal charge against him or of his rights and obligation in any suit of law. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing by a competent, independent, impartial tribunal established by law. There's no such thing. They're all bought and paid for clerks. There's no common law offenses against the United States. Only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command are crimes. So there's no common law. It's all occupied military law. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. Legislature may create an offense and the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. They have to make a statute because under martial law, there are no crimes unless they pass a statute to make it a crime. They make statutes that make murder, treason, sedition, assault, theft crimes. Okay, those are all common law crimes. But they have to make statutes that make common law crimes. They turn them into crimes because otherwise they're not a crime. Have to have a statute. Under common law, there are already crimes, but there's no common law. That's why they put it in statutes and constitution statements about common law. That's why statutes and constitutions only apply to belligerents, the slaves. A penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute, the only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. The words penal and penalty in their strict primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. So people are sold into slavery, into jail. That's exactly what happens. You agree to it. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. That's why you got to file bar complaints against the lawyers. I don't care who he is. If he's a prosecutor, if he's a district attorney, I don't care. File him. I file against district attorneys. I file them against prosecutors. I mean, if they're doing anything to me, like the city, for example, if I get a ticket, I file a bar complaint against the prosecutor and the city attorney, and then I find out a lot of times they're in a law firm, so then I find out who the partners are in the law firm, and I file bar complaints against them too. And I just filed 7 bar complaints against every partner in a third-party debt collection law firm. And what they say is that law firm gets 3 bar complaints, then they have to put it out. It goes out of business. They have to start another one. I guess we'll see. Anyways, the real source of the problem is these scumbag bar members. File bar complaints against them. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, and the only object is to recover a penalty or forfeiture imposed as a punishment for a certain specific offense, while a remedial action is one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. See, anything, it's all about contracts. A penal action is a civil suit brought for the recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions, on the one hand, closely related to criminal prosecutions, on the other, to actions for private injuries in which the party aggrieved may by statute recover punitive damages. So, again, it's all civil. There's no real criminal, and it's these scumbag bar members. So file bar grievances against these scumbag bar members. If some store won't let you wear a mask, find out who the attorney is. File a bar grievance against them, because they're not doing it without getting it cleared by that scumbag bar member. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use and the receiving actual profits, while the season of the land remained the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. To be bound in conscience to account to assist to use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. And these old law dictionaries, and that one in particular, the pages aren't even numbered. And so I can't even tell you, but so you got to just look it up, volume 2, under the definition of mort main, and there's like probably a couple, 3 pages of it there, but it's there. An act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, which was approved March 3rd, 1901 by the 56th Congress at 31 Stat 1208, that in addition to the jurisdiction conferred in the preceding section, plenary jurisdictions hereby given to said court holding the said special term to hear and determine all questions relative to the execution of any and all wills. And at 31 Stat 1432, it says the legal estate to be the sestque use. So again, plenary jurisdiction is military dictatorship. And sestque use, that's what they're using. This is in the DC code, and that sounds like the same thing as what the sestque use is that's in the Roman cult. An act to establish a code of law in the District of Columbia, they presume you're dead. At 31 Stat 1230, presumption of death. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive sestque trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. And that's found in, that's a summary of 5 pages of congressional record. Okay, so if you go looking for it there, you won't find it. It's a summary. You got to use that gray matter between your ears to find it. It'll be there. You got to read between the lines. Every taxpayer is a sestque trust having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. Again, that's a summary of that case. You got to use the gray matter between your ears and read between the lines. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge in municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not in a discretionary capacity. They're bought and paid for clerks. It is the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a ministerial clerk for an agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency. When any state proceeds against a private individual in a judicial forum, it's well settled that the state, county, municipality, etc., waives any immunity to counters, cross claims, and complaints by direct or collateral means regarding the matters involved. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity. Immunity for judges does not extend to acts which are clearly outside their jurisdiction. A clerk masquerading as a judge is not competent to do anything judicial like issue orders or warrants. A clerk masquerading as a judge is operating in his private capacity and has no immunity. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. In other words, if they issue a warrant, it's a fraud, it's a nullity, it's perjury of oath. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves 1 through 4, Churchianity series, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 4 or 5. Actually, there's a 7 coming out. I just remembered I got a bar member 7 I'm going to be doing next week in the advanced training. Do-it-yourself on out to volunteer for the selective service in the draft. Martial law is here. Do-it-yourself no income tax. Do-it-yourself no sales tax. Do-it-yourself traffic stop. Do-it-yourself free mail 1 and 2. Do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through I think 18 now or 19. A kangaroo court is a term descriptive of a sham legal proceeding in which a person's rights are totally disregarded, in which the result is a foregone conclusion. Oh, look, a kangaroo court. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. You got that right. You have to get your consent to obtain jurisdiction, and if all judges become clerks working for the prosecutor when enforcing a statute, and if a clerk masquerading as a judge cannot do anything judicial, then all statutes are color of law. All statutes have to be consented to. All statutes are satanic, full of fraud and deception, and a code is a compilation of taken from statutes that means a code are worth less than a statute. They're all a bunch of thieves. That's why you file a bar complaint against the lawyers. Anytime there's anything going on, there's a lawyer involved. File a bar complaint. Bring up the right issues. Oh, look, a kangaroo court. There's a kangaroo court right there. Oh, look, another kangaroo court. There's another kangaroo court. It is noted as significant that the act constituting the court dispenses with trial by jury, a provision which is distinctly upheld in spite of the Seventh Amendment. With respect to status of the court, the opinion concludes, while it has been said that the creation of a special function of the court definitely reflects its status as a legislative court, there is propriety in mentioning the fact that Congress has always treated it as having that status. From the outset, Congress has required it to give merely advisory decisions. Under the act creating it, all of its decisions were to be of that nature. This is true at the present time, a duty to give decisions which are advisory only, and so without force as judicial judgments may be laid on a legislative court, but not on a constitutional court established under Article 3. Well, I submit that there are no Article 3 courts. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence. That rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. So it's all rules of civil procedure. Well, it might as well be Roman law. It might as well be municipal law. That's exactly what it is. And there's a maxim of Roman law that says, let he who is willing to be deceived be deceived. Matter of fact, I think I'm just going to add that in there. War is business. It's all about business. That awkward moment when you realize the same government that's supposed to protect us from the terrorists is the terrorists. If you think this is for your protection, you clearly have no idea what's going on. Can you spot the terrorists? Terrorism is a noun, the use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political aims. I see a whole bunch of terrorists there. Oh, some more terrorists and a dictator. Warning, this is the standing army you were told not to tolerate. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. No joke. Vatican endorses military force against ISIS genocide. The Vatican's line on ISIS has taken a new turn as its ambassador in Geneva suggested that if a political settlement is impossible, military force should be used against the jihadists. He also said the form of intervention should be defined by the UN. So it's interesting to note that so many organizations seem to think they need to get the Vatican's permission to go and make war. That's taken from RT. Russia Today. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. Conspiracy theorist, someone who questions the statements of known liars. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. Well said. The Treaty of Hidalgo does not end martial law. Arizona, New Mexico, California, Utah, Nevada are all under a military occupation to this day. Texas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Kansas, and Alabama are all under a military occupation to this day. And actually, then the rest of the eastern states, all the rest of them, because of the bankruptcy. This is just because of the wars. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Google called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Let's just go ahead and change that. So we'll go Google Groups. Freelist.org. I don't have the Vimeos, or the Vimeos are there. Donations, I have videos of private information shares and these videos that are available on thumb drives that show these and other court citations that are available for donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the fake money, the military script, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. And send me an email for other copies of documents to engineerwin@yahoo.com. But I do have on my website, sovereigntyinternational.fyi, on my website is a page that has a bunch of free files. And there's also another page that has links to almost all of my YouTube videos. So if you want to study by topic, then on my website it's probably the best place, because you can study there's a bunch of almost all of my YouTube videos are listed, links to them are on my webpage, on my website, and you can find them there and organized by topics. It's a lot easier than trying to search, because YouTube, you don't get the search, doesn't search too well. Anyways, that's the end of this one. If anybody has any other videos they want to go through, If anybody has any more videos that you'd like to go through, it is now, we can still go through another video. So if you have one that you want to go through, please suggest one. Either that or I'll have to figure one out, or we can shut her down for the day, whichever way you want to do it. What I am trying to do is I want to build a place of refuge for people to come when things get really bad. There's a lot of reason to believe that it's gonna kind of turn into like these zombie movies. You know what I mean? Quantum grammar. You know, I've seen that. I remember David. He's dead now. David. I don't know that that's that important. These judges just file bar complaints. That's all I do. I file bar complaints and judicial complaints. I mean, anytime they're dragging you in there, there's a lawyer. I'm not sure that it's important to speak correct English. There's no doubt about it, but I've never seen that it really made any difference. And I think that the bar complaints that I do definitely make a difference. Does anybody else have anything you want to go through? Let me see if I can find a short one that I can go through. One thing to keep in mind, that's why I use watch my Form 1020 video, because they always want commercial paper. Matter of fact, they can't ask for lawful money because there's none in general circulation. So they're forced to ask for the commercial paper, the Federal Reserve notes. And so, but they'll never ask for that because that'd be perjury of oath. And so you just tell them, no problem, I'll pay. Tell me what to pay. And that's what the Form 1020 does, and does it in writing. And you give them a first notice, and then a notice of default, an opportunity to cure, and then a final notice of default says, I don't owe you anything. And I've actually used that for filing fees in court cases and all sorts of stuff. How to remove yourself from the system. All you have to do is study the law and quit participating. That's all you have to do. You cannot really remove yourself. You have to understand that you have to be careful. There's a lot of disinformation out there. You don't want to go into international law, because international law is Roman law, and you're dealing with thieves. And these people that say to certify the birth certificate and all that. In my opinion, that's a major mistake. I don't do any of that. Not interested in doing any of that. Next week, I'll be talking about some of my advanced tactics like bar complaints and nasty grams. I send them nasty grams too. Starts off with normally I say I accept your oath of office, but you and I both know you have no intention of honoring your oath of office, so fuck your oath, you motherfucking son of a bitch. And I send those to judges and federal judges and chiefs of police, and but you got to do it right. Got to do it right. Can't be any threats. Um, I don't know if you can prepay your property taxes. I think that's kind of sounding like a bit of a scam, in my opinion. What I do is if I can't, what I do is I bring forward the land patent, and if it's done properly, it won't be on the tax rolls. And then if they are, like there's some of my land that I haven't brought forward the land patent on, and so then what I do is I send them the form 1020 and build a case against their bar member, and then file bar complaints. And the bar members are the ones that are just doing all of it, and so those are the ones you got to go after. If you fix the bar members up, you'll never have any trouble. Yep, go after them for the felonies that they're engaged in. Go after the bar members. They're the ones that go after. That's all going to be my event next week. I don't think they pay any attention to that stuff. They might not, but it really, when their work gets on the line, that's what gets their attention. I've been to the Supreme Court 5 times, and they the bar members basically go ahead and testify against you and say all sorts of stuff, but when you file a bar grievance, all of a sudden they shut up. It's amazing how that works. Okay, well, I think I'm going to end it for today. We'll be starting again tomorrow at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. That'll be 10 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow morning for anybody that wants to watch in tomorrow. And I think we're going to be probably talking about land. We'll be talking about land, and so anybody has any questions about land, that'll be a good time to bring it up, okay? We'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time. Bye.